So I'm bringing in a notepad for the sake of understanding, okay? Let's say you have to print numbers 1 through 4, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Print numbers 1 through 4, okay? Let's see how while or for will solve the problem. You come in the loop. What do you do first? Check the condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the number is equals to 1. So does that follows the condition? So you
Yep.
print 1. And then you do an increment. You go back and you check the condition again. Follows the condition, you print 2. Then you go back, follows the condition, print 3. You go back, follow the condition, print 4. Then you go back, does not follow the condition, right? So I'm just using in curly
Mm-hmm.
braces. So how many times did you go through?
5.
5. Now let's check the do while. Do while right away enters, doesn't even check the first time. Prints 1, makes it 2, and then checks. Prints 2, then makes it 3, checks, then prints 3. Makes it 4,
Okay.
okay? And then it exits. So it makes 1 less check. So that's why do while is more performance efficient, because it goes through 1 less cycle than the other 2.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we're going to start out with the while loop. While loop example. Public static void main. Integer count equals to 1, while count is less than equals to 5. Count plus plus. Run it, and you get 5 lines of output, 1 through 5.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now, what will happen if I comment out line 9? What I just did on line number 8, what will happen? Is we move the line number 9 into line number 8, and it's a post increment. So what is post increment?
It goes up just by 1.
First display the current value and then increment by 1. So that's why it first displays its existing value, which in the first cycle is 1, and then it becomes 2. So this is how you can combine lines 8 and 9 in while loop. You don't have to do them in 2 separate lines. Now you save it as do while example, do while loop example. So let's save it as do while loop example and push the while towards the bottom. Okay, and change and add the word do. And that should work exactly the same way. Of course, behind the scene is much faster. Now let's save it as for loop example. So we'll rename it. And let's make some necessary changes. For integer count equals to 1, count less than equals to 5, count plus plus. Again, if you have seen stuff in C#, this should come pretty easy. Same stuff. but with for loop. Start at 1, end at 5, incrementing by 1, and as you're looping through, you display. In this approach, will the variable count exist outside of the for loop? And the answer is no.
No.
The reason is because we declared it in the body of for loop, so it will not exist outside of the for loop. It will only exist as far as line number 8. But for any reason, if you want the count to be also available outside of the for loop, then you must declare it outside of the for loop so that you can access it outside of the for loop. But in that case, it starts complaining you cannot declare count twice. So you may be like, okay, then I'm going to drop the integer. But then you run into another problem. A QA team will going to look at your code and will say, oh, that's code redundancy. Why do you want to write the same instruction twice? You already declared it to be equals to 1. Java basically came up with this cool idea that is borrowed from C++, is that you can simply skip the first portion. And this, it only just puts a semicolon because you're done with declaration. You don't need to be doing it twice. Run it, works exactly the same way. So if you have initialized your variable once before you enter the loop, you do not need to reinitialize it. Looks a little bit weird, but works exactly the same way in Java, C#, C++, C, JavaScript, PHP, all of them. It works the same way. Similarly, on line number 8, if you decide to leave it as count plus plus, well, you can then skip it from here. Works perfectly fine. Okay. So those are some variations in for loop that you can see